We have 5 early voting sites in Henrico, and I can't bring out multiple ballots for each ballot style trying to guess who's going to show up where. So for the early voting, absentee voting, we have ballot-on-demand printers that we use. And when we check into the poll pads, our electronic poll books, we print out a ballot and we hand it to the voter saying, this ballot was made just for you.
The full and free exercise of our sacred right and duty to vote is more important in the long run than the personal hopes or ambitions of any candidate for any office in the land.
You're listening to High Turnout Wide Margins, an insider's look at election administration hosted by Brianna Lennon and Eric Fay. This episode was recorded live at the special workshop on state associations in Portland, Oregon, hosted by the Election Center.
Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of High Turnout Wide Margins. I'm Eric Fay, Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri, and I'm here with my co-host,
Brianna Lennon. I'm the County Clerk in Boone County, Missouri.
And on this episode, our guest is Mark. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark Coakley from Henrico, Virginia, Elections Director over there.
So Mark from Henrico, which I love the pronunciation. Tell us, how did you get involved in elections?
Sure thing. So I started off in Greensboro, North Carolina, Guilford County, and I was still in school. I was on the 8-year college program, and my minister, her husband, was the elections director, George Gilbert. And behind the altar on my wedding day, I said, hey, I'm getting married. I need a job. And he said, come work for me. And I think we were like 4 or 5 interns he has hired that have come to be elections directors throughout North Carolina and Virginia. So I started off in 1996 as the intern. I thought I was there just to empty the water containers. And my first phone call was a person who missed the polls at the 96 primary, presidential primary. And since all I've done before is just empty water containers, I said, well, do I go pick her up and take her to the polls? She missed her ride. And I was told, no, you find a phone number and give it to them. So we've always been related to customer service and voter experience and that's what I've grown up on, working in elections.
So there's a few reasons why I wanted to talk to somebody from Virginia. But before we get into that, I was hoping that you could give a summary overview of how elections are structured in the state of Virginia.
Sure thing. So in Virginia, we have 133 localities. Cities are independent from counties. So 133 localities. We have a 3-board member that's picked by the party reps, party chairs for each locality. 2 are of the governor's race and 1 is of the opposite party of the governor, and they oversee elections and appoint registrars, election directors. So I was appointed by a 3-board member. It's a 4-year term. Had to break the news to my wife when I got this job that I was appointed, and it's a 4-year term. It's not just a lifelong position. And so elections are run locally. We do have a state board of elections, 5 members. And they oversee the Department of Elections. Elect is what it's called in Virginia. And it's good. It's a mix of top-down, bottom-up working relationship with the state and localities.
So it's my understanding in Virginia, the Registrars Association, the acronym is VRAV, is that right?
VRAV, yes.
So I love that because in St. Louis, one of the most popular St. Louis foods are toasted raviolis, which a lot of people call T-Ravs. So whenever I hear about VRAV, all I think of are toasted raviolis. But
I might have to try that.
Yeah. They're pot.
That's the most St. Louis thing you've ever said.
I've never met anybody who didn't like T-Ravs. So
we're going to have that in August at our meeting.
There you go. You should have T-Ravs at VRAV. That would be awesome. So tell us a little bit about VRAV and how it's structured, what it does.
Okay, so with our association, VRAV, it's for the registrars, election directors. The electoral board has its own association also, the 3 members, and they're called VBA. So you have VIBA and VRAV. We have a president, first vice president, and we have 7 regions in Virginia in our 133 localities. And the 7 regions has its own regional director. We have our own listserv where we can talk among ourselves privately through like Teams and things like that. We meet once a year for our association, and then when VIBA has their meeting, they're more fancier. They meet at the Homestead. If anybody's familiar with Homestead, probably not. But so we do have a meeting at their association also. It's very good. We just changed our budgeting format for dues and membership. It's now based on population. So Fairfax County in Virginia is the largest county that we have, locality we have. So anywhere from, I think it's 250,000 up to Fairfax, we pay a certain amount, and then it just breaks down by population. Of the 133 localities, there's only 18 of us that are over 100,000. So a lot of small, middle-sized counties make up most of our association.
So Virginia, I'm sure there are other states that do this too, but Virginia is the one that always sticks in my head is you are statutorily required to do precinct level results for things.
That is correct. We have precinct level ballots. So every precinct gets its own ballot style.
So about how many precincts, like for your jurisdiction, how many precincts do you have?
So we have 90 precincts in Henrico County. When we have dual primaries and we have split precincts, I had over 200 ballot styles to deal with.
So how do you handle that in situations when you have early voting where anybody could come in, or you have a central polling location, presumably not vote centers, but like we have central polling locations? I know that there's equipment can lift a lot of that, but what exactly does the process look like for you to staff up locations that have to serve like everybody?
That's a great point and question. So with our 200 ballot styles, we have 5 early voting sites in Henrico, and I can't bring out multiple ballots for each ballot style trying to guess who's going to show up where. So for the early voting, absentee voting, we have ballot on demand printers that we use, and when we check into the poll pads, our electronic poll books, we print out a ballot and we hand it to the voter saying, this ballot was made just for you. And they really like that. They think they're special. We say, get your name and ID and check you in, and then a ballot just automatically prints. So we don't have 200 plus ballots going to our 5 locations. Ballot security is an issue when they question, why are you printing a ballot just for me? Then we can get into the details of that. Now on election day, every precinct gets its own ballot, right? Precinct 101, it's going to have the title Precinct 101 written on that ballot. The logistical nightmare we found out was if we're running low in one precinct, we can't borrow from Peter to pay Paul, right? We have to make sure we have enough ballots just for that precinct. And so what is your percent turnout going to be? What is it based on, statistics from previous years? Or do you just order 100% for every precinct, knowing so many people voted early also? It's been more of a fiscal challenge than anything else at the precinct level. For the early voting sites, the ballot on demand has really helped out a lot.
For smaller places, because when you were talking about how, smaller cities and the number of jurisdictions that have a pretty small number of voters, do they have fewer ballot styles, or are they having to deal with a similar issue but maybe just not scaled like yours?
They would either scale down. We have localities that still have paper poll books, so they really can't do a ballot on demand at our small localities. So they will have all their ballot styles, maybe 10 to 12 if you think about a precinct. I'm thinking some of our cities that have 7 precincts. So, they could just have 14 ballot styles, something like that for a primary election. They can handle that and handle the ballot security of having all of those paper ballots stored in their site location for an early voting period.
Mark, is it always the case that there is one precinct at a polling location, or sometimes are there multiple precincts at a polling location?
We have a one-on-one situation, so every precinct it will have a polling place attached to it. Now, we do have polling facilities with 2 precincts in them. Some schools, there's just there's 2 precincts that will vote in the school, one in the gym and one in the cafeteria, but they are completely separate from each other. We just couldn't find a facility to cover both precincts, so we just have them in one building. We do have a law in Virginia that there's a size maximum for a precinct for the number of voters of 5,000. So that's why I can't merge the 2 precincts together, but I can make one a gym and one a cafeteria.
That's good. So you're never in a situation where on election day at those precincts, the poll workers at the table have more than one type of ballot.
That's right. We're not handing out 202 for 101. They are separate locations. And again, each ballot style, the way they've been designed, is to have the title of your precinct and number on the top and bottom, where it gives your statistics about, the House race, the Senate race, congressional order, and then I'll say the precinct number down there too. And again, we just love to hand out the ballot saying this ballot's made just for you, and along with your I voted sticker.
Do you have, I know that every state has different rules about the voting equipment, but is there different voting equipment in different places in Virginia, or is everyone on the same type?
We have 4 certified voting equipment vendors in Virginia. They have to go through state certification. We do follow the voluntary standards from the EAC, and I know we're getting ready to go to 2.0, hopefully sooner rather than later. So 4 different vendors of voting equipments are in Virginia. We are all, though, of the 4, all optical scan. We have no more touchscreen units. I think the last touchscreen voting machines we had was 2015, and then we went to all optical scan after that.
What about you? Were you a touchscreen county, or were you always optical scan?
I was a touchscreen. We started off in 2005. And went through 15 with the touchscreen. I will say the touchscreen is great for the voters. Voters love to find ways to spoil a ballot, right? Touchscreen was more difficult for them to spoil a ballot. But on an optical scan machine, the poll worker duties and responsibilities are much easier. They flip a switch, they open a lid, the machine turns on. So I'm much more favor of optical scan machines for the poll worker perspective of what they have to manage. Even though they're managing all these paper ballots, the setup and the cleanup afterwards has greatly reduced time and mistakes on their part.
You run into any particular challenges when you were making that transition from touchscreen to paper, essentially?
I did not like the fact that we were going backwards. I think that was... the national stay was, you're going backwards to paper from a computer. And I never liked that narrative. I like the fact that we can now, everybody can hold their ballot, right? We have curbside, outside polls voting, and we would have to take a touchscreen unit to their car. And I always said, stand in front of the car so they don't drive away, right? And everybody laughed until someone tried to drive away with one of our touchscreen units. Paper ballots, they drive away, they're not going to vote. They've lost their chance. So the security and then the issues around that, again, is why I like the paper ballot, the holding of the ballots.
Hello, I'm Eric Fay, Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri, and you're listening to High Turnout Wide Margins, a podcast where we explore local election administration.
Like with all of the different requirements for things and having them all very granular level, if there has been any movements to maybe not have to do, like allow combinations of it. I know campaigns really like to get that information. Analysts like to get that information. But other states, kind of ours included, don't require that fine level of detail. Have there been conversations in Virginia to to consolidate any of those?
No, actually, it's more of an expansion of those areas. We went to this precinct-based ballot where we have to have our voter turnout on Thursday after election for the precincts and for our absentee voting. So your elected officials and the consultants will know in an early voting situation how many voted in Precinct 101, in the Ridgefield precinct. They want that, quick, right after the election to move on and get their data for the next time around and to know who their constituents are, who voted in what race, especially a primary or the general election. So we have to have quick turnaround with our election night reporting and then the election results with voter turnout by precinct. So we're trying to be more of an expansion area, get as much data out there to the candidates and consultants as possible.
Mark, at lunch you told this great story about your experience in the 2000 election, because I'm not trying to say you're old, but you're one of the few folks now that was around for the 2000 election. And, that was a watershed moment for election administrators. But your experience was maybe a little different. So share with the listenership, such that it is, what was it like working in elections in 2000 and then after 2000?
Sure. One of the things is we're renovating our office. I found a letter from 1999 from Doug Lewis of the Election Center saying in 2000, let's take a trip to Greece, right? The Election Center, we wanted to go to the birthplace of democracy. Let's go to Greece. And then November of 2000 happened, and there was no mention of leaving states, more or less the country, with election officials. The story I tell is it was raining that November of 2000, and we had optical scan paper ballots that the precinct officials brought back in just a cardboard box. They just scooped them up, put them in a box, and sent them back to our office that night. With the rain, the boxes got wet. A box opened, and ballots spilled all over our wet parking lot. And we're laughing, scooping them up. The precinct officials are scooping them up. We're trying to find a dry box to put them in. No seals, no signature, no ballot count on them, just in a box. And then after watching Florida have to bring everything up to Tallahassee in those huge metal containers, the times changed. The times changed on the spot between that November and then when the Supreme Court made their decision in early December. But there has been no talk of Greece since then at all. So even though I still have the letter saying that we were going to go.
Do you think, given Virginia's proximity to D.C., do you think that you get a fair amount of D.C. pressure to do certain things a certain way, or when there are conversations at the federal level that change elections, Virginia legislature gets ideas and tries to do things? Yes,
I do. In the D.C., Virginia, Maryland area, we call the DMV, and we're so close with such major media markets that voters do get confused about what a Maryland law is when the polls open in Virginia. If it's snowing in D.C. and it closes down and they polling place, how does that affect even down where I am in Richmond? I get voter calls saying, I hear a polling place is closed. What are you doing about it? And I have no idea. So the media markets and the legislatures from national level in D.C., the federal government, and both Maryland and our state of the Commonwealth of Virginia, we just have to really be more specific about just what applies to each voter. Richmond has a market of 11 different localities, and we're all different. Our commissioner says a Big Mac in Richmond ought to be the same as a Big Mac in Washington County. We should have uniformity, but you can't really have uniformity in elections, as we all know. We can try to have our Big Macs, but we do need to have that little bit of individualism to conform with the voters' needs and wants.
Mark, the other thing I've been wanting to bring up in this interview is going back to VRAV, because I'm very big on the VRAVs. The kind of unconference or open conference. A year or so ago, a couple years ago, I heard this concept for the first time at an election center event, that you all in Virginia had kind of gone with this new concept at your state conference that was kind of a make it up as you go. That's not a great name for it, but it was kind of open-ended, and then the members kind of drove at the conference what the topics would be and so forth. You mentioned that you were a little skeptical at first, but maybe came around to it. So can you talk about that experience and if you would suggest it for other states?
Sure. So in elementary school, I went to a Catholic school where you just sat at your desk with your hands folded and you stared directly at the nun for the whole day. And that's what I grew up on, education. That's what I learned. Going to an open forum of training where each table makes their own topics and goes on, I was skeptical. I'm a big believer in it now. Again, the death of the PowerPoint has really influenced me. I love my 100 slides for a 2-hour training, and you're just not going to get that anymore. People are not going to sit for that, not stand for it, but sit for that long. Knowing that you are in control is a big thing too, and that's what we tell everybody with the open forum, is you get to be in control of what you're going to learn today. It's a collaboration through everybody. It's just not given to you in a brochure saying, here's your 10 to 11 training, here's your 1 to 3 class. We get to make it up, and we get to train ourselves and learn from each other. And I think that's the best aspect of this open forum, is the collaboration training. I still haven't gotten over the numbered tables where you're assigned a table number. I still want to stick with my clan, stick with my group, my soulmates. But having to sit in the front row now, which I've never done before, but table 2, because my last name ends in a C, if it's alphabetical, I'm at table 2 right up front, has gotten me out of my comfort zone also. And again, I really do appreciate it, the fact that we are learning from each other and we are opening up the forum. Some of the topics that have come up, the COOP plan, continue of operations. I mean, it used to be if there was a power outage, you got a generator, right? But then where do you get that generator? Who makes that phone call? Things like that. So learning about COOP plans from just who knew it was going to be this popular. And today we found out it was pretty popular. Security, newbies have been a good one. Well, the turnover rate is so high in elections. It really is. The good news is that we're finding out with the turnover rate, we're hiring from within, right? We have the approach of, train your deputies, train your staff, empower them to take the leadership role in the next locality over. So we're not coming from, I want to say Sears, but I guess there's no more Sears. So, we're not coming from the Walmart to elections. We're coming from within, and then we're building that base. But there is still a hand-holding that we need. And topics like that, the newbie topic and then the COOP plan, are two of the ones that I found that I never would have sat through if I saw that on the brochure, when I at registration desk. But helping us come up with that and say, look, we really need to talk about that. And that should be a topic that we're all concerned about. And then that's what's really helped us.
There's probably not a lot in elections you haven't seen. So moving into this year's presidential election in November, what, if anything, is keeping you up at night?
I'll tell you what's keeping me up at night is the public comments at our staff meetings, the board meetings that we have for Henrico County, where the public will say, I already don't have confidence in what's going to happen in November. How can they say that in April, that they have no confidence? And, and what can I do? How can I convince you, who lives next to me, sees my license plate, sees my house, knows when I come and go, that you don't have confidence in what I'm doing 9 months later? and that's just and that's why that story needs to be told, and we need to be on podcast, and we need to be out there, and we need to have the association really plug the positives that we do and the success stories that we have in elections.
You've been listening to High Turnout Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local elections administration. I'm your host, Brianna Lennon, alongside Eric Fay. A big thanks to KBIA and the Election Center for making this podcast possible. Our managing editor is Rebecca Smith, managing producer is Aaron Hay, our associate producer is Katie Quinn, and our digital producer is Mark Johnson. This has been High Turnout Wide Margins. Thanks for listening.